everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in studio today where we have Haley Joel Osment. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
I just want to start off by saying now that it's 2019, you've officially been acting for 25 years, which is nuts. And I know you have a lot of credits around 1994. Was Forrest Gump, though, your very first, was that the first time you ever set foot on a film?
Yeah, that was the first movie. I'd done like a couple commercials before then, I think, and maybe one or two things on TV. But that was the first official movie.
Yeah, you were super young. How old were you?
I would have been 4 when we shot it and 5 when it came out.
Did you, could you understand what what was happening even at that young of an age? I mean, I don't even know what I was doing it for. I don't have a single memory for it.
I guess so. Like, it's not a continuous memory of the whole time being there, but there are certain experiences and days that stand out to me. I remember I learned to tie my shoe on that film set. But yeah, it was in Beaufort, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia back then.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I'd seen a film set, this gigantic epic movie where they were doubling parts of the swamp to look like Vietnam, and they had these warehouses full of military uniforms for that whole part of the movie. So it was an intense thing to see.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you know who Tom Hanks was?
Yeah, I think. I mean, my knowledge of his resume was pretty limited back then to like Big and some other things, probably. Not.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was in the middle of that amazing run of films where I think he won Best Actor like 2 years running for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, and so yeah, it's wild because my image of him is, I guess he was back in his early 30s or something then, and I can remember that very well.
So then years pass, you have Sixth Sense, which was obviously huge. One of my favorite movies, and you're so good in it. It's shocking. I just watched it recently, and it's incredible for you being so young. And how did you do that? How did you at that age understand where were you drawing from with that emotion? How did you get to that place so well?
I think that was really one of those times where when you have a script that's written so well and gives you such a clear idea of where you're supposed to be with the character and really situates you in the movie. Like the script read as well as the movie flows. Like it's just a really expertly constructed, storyline, and all the character developments and everything just really make a whole lot of sense, and there's this momentum to the movie. So getting on set and being in an environment that felt really immersive, we had an actual cold room where they could see people's breaths. I think they might animate that today, but there was actually sets where you had to go on that were like 30 degrees or something so that your breath would come out. And you really felt like you were in that world. So I think that was the biggest factor.
Yeah, it just seems like so much pressure again, when I was 11, it's like, what am I doing, when you're here on the set with millions of dollars, and M. Night Shyamalan is there, and Bruce Willis is there.
Yeah, that was a big...
Is it not intimidating? Did
not
it feel
really,
intimidating?
And that's to Knight's credit, and he was a year younger than I am right now when he made that movie. So he kind of set the tone on set. I mean, I was at an age where I knew it was a bigger movie than I had done before, but we didn't have the expectations for that it would become a big hit or would be part of award season or stuff like that. And so on set, Knight was just very comfortable. I mean, I remember him sitting in a chair like this, bouncing a basketball in between lighting transitions and everything. So he was a very relaxed and comfortable guy to be around.
Did you sort of take anything away from working with Bruce Willis?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first, movie star that I'd really been around, and he really wore the part well and just was very charismatic, very kind to all the people around him. And I think we all just had this sense that we had a great story on our hands, and if we all just worked well together as a team, it would turn out to be something special.
Yeah, and you and Toni Collette, I mean, she's incredible, and
she's
that
awesome.
scene with you guys in the car at the end kills me tears just streaming every time. I've seen the movie a lot, and every time it just kills me. Okay, so I also read that you were your career had all this momentum, and then you went back to school for theater. Yes? Why did you do that?
I think, you can go to college or return to college at any point in your life. It just felt really important to me to do it at that age. There's only going to be that one opportunity when you're, 18 years old and, you move to a different city and you're studying acting around people that were, that are all your own age. Because that was completely new for me. I was usually the only kid on the set in a lot of situations. So to do something where it's all of a sudden, only people who are your exact age and have your shared experience in that way
Was that
was
when
a
you were
unique
18?
opportunity. Yeah, I went to
okay,
college.
cool.
Yeah.
So you just were like doing the normal. You're like, I'm 18. I want to go
It
to
was
college.
just time, yeah. And
Yeah.
even like the last 2 years of high school, I wasn't working very much because that whole process is so intense, and there's standardized tests and classes you have to take and all these activities you have to do for the college application process. And that was just my life for 16 through 22.
Good for you. A lot of people would be like, standardized test. I'm sorry. I'm kind of a big deal.
Well, my mom was a 6th grade teacher, so even if I wasn't going to study acting, like college was definitely going to happen in some way or another. Yeah.
During that time, though, Kingdom Hearts seems to be like the through line.
It's the longest.
You've been doing it for a long time. So
Excuse me.
were you working on that during that time as well? Was that sort of the only thing the only thing that we would all, I guess, recognize your work from?
I did. I started the first one when I was like 12 in 2001 or 2000. Then the second one was my last 2 years of high school. And then there were all these like little mini sequels between the second one in 2005 and the third one, which was just this year. So I was working on that. I did a couple small independent films like early on in college, and I did one play on Broadway for a short run. But in the last like 2 years of college, I was getting so far behind on credits when I was taking a semester off or everything that I just wanted to go through with it, and also stay with the core group of people that I had entered college with in this program, which was basically a conservatory program.
Right. It's great that you've been able to, keep that character going for so long. I feel like you play it as a kid, and your voice your voice just changes obviously over time.
Definitely.
So it's nice that they sort of kept you in that role, and you still seem to enjoy it. So that's cool.
Oh yeah, I think it's easier to do that young voice, and Sora's gotten a little older as time has
because he's
gone
still
on.
sort of like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. But he just
I feel
as
like
an
the
adult.
character is like McConaughey in Interstellar, and like he hasn't aged very much, but I'm the old guy on the ship, at a different rate of speed.
Yeah.
But now that like my voice is like reached, I think its final form.
We think.
It's easier to get to alter it than when I was like a middle teenager and my voice was still changing, and I was trying to hit that like 11-year-old pitch.
Okay, so now let's talk about what you have going on now. Finally. So you're in Future Man, which is on Hulu.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about your movie that just premiered at Sundance, Extremely Wicked. Sorry. Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile.
Correct.
That's a mouthful.
It took a while for us to get it to. Yeah.
Why don't you tell me about your character in the movie?
I am an invented character, and unlike what Wikipedia and IMDb say, I am not a detective. I'm just
Is that
Jerry.
what it says
Yeah, it
on
says
Wikipedia?
Detective Jerry something. I was like, no.
Who did
I
that?
actually think I figured out why that's happening. I think the algorithm went into the documentary where there is a Detective Jerry something, or like, oh, it must be that. Like, force these names together.
Or, someone on Wikipedia is like,
Thought they were really,
he's a
really
detective.
clever. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not a detective.
Not a detective. I am a humble worker at the University Medical Office who works across the room from Lily Collins' character. He sees her take these calls from Ted Bundy and sees her sort of, start to wither and die because he's just draining the life out of her with his manipulation and his lies. And so he kind of tries to, make his way into her life along with her friend. He's played by Angela Sarafian, and sort of help her see a future without Ted Bundy.
Okay. Were you familiar with Ted Bundy before? Are you like a true crime person? Are you a murderino?
No. I say that, but like I think everyone has spent a lot of time like going down that Wikipedia rabbit hole, even if they sort of stumble onto it. So I did know the chronology of the case, but the details and the footage that has sort of surfaced with the documentary and everything, just seeing all because he was just had this bizarre way to subtly change his voice and his appearance that's really, really creepy.
He had this British, he would put on the British affectation
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well, just in the tapes too, and I know that some of this is because of the deterioration of the audio tapes over time, but like he just sounds like a different person sometimes.
I thought that too when I watched
weird.
the Netflix, the one that Joe
Yeah.
did. Yeah, it was like, is that really the same person
It
talking?
takes a second for sometimes you're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's him.
It's weird.
And because he's talking in the third person, you're like, oh, this is like a doctor or a detective detective, and you're like, oh no, it's the guy who did it. Yeah.
Super weird.
Creepy.
Yeah, a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
What did that script come to you just like through the normal process? And if so, because I think I heard Joe said that you were his first choice for that.
It was
role.
awesome. Like everybody, I think, was his first choice, and I believe him. It's an honor to be put in that cast in that way. But when I saw the script, I think most of those names had already agreed to do it. So even before cracking the script, I was like, I'm feeling like Joe Berlinger's name is on it. But it being a Ted Bundy project, I was aware of the risks and the need for it to be handled properly, and the way that the script was designed, and knowing that Joe was going to be the guy to do it, I felt really confident jumping on board.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the trailer. Can I ask you about the
Sure.
trailer? It's okay if you don't want to talk about it, but it's just so polarizing that I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, an important thing to remember is that the director and nobody from the film has any input into it. It's a marketing company that does it. So
thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So we don't always have control over that, or we rarely have control over it. But another thing that I thought was really sort of summed up a lot of the response to it was somebody on Twitter was like, the director of this Ted Bundy movie should really take a page from the guy who directed the documentary on Netflix. It's the same guy.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean, I totally understand that response to it, and we're certainly at a point where it's a particularly heavy topic and one to be considered seriously about whether you should depict some things at all in any way. And I wouldn't want to argue with anybody who feels that that's an absolute, that you should never depict it. But our approach to it, I think everybody who's on the same page with this, particularly Joe, is that we're trying to show how someone like this did what he did. Because a lot of people all the way through the murder trials did not believe that it was possible. He was this handsome, college-educated white guy. Mm-hmm. And we're showing the movie from Lily's perspective because you had to see what a seductive person he was to, someone who's so obviously guilty in retrospect. We're sort of seeing it from the inside of the story before all the puzzle pieces fell into place.
Yeah. I mean, it is a marketing, trailers are marketing tools at the end of the day. So I understand. I see both sides, but I was very curious how, someone who's in the film and, like we were saying, everybody, took such care with this story. It seems like anyways, from everything that we've seen from, yourself, the rest of the cast and the director. It's like everyone seems to have been very careful with telling this story. So then you have a trailer that comes out and obviously you want people to see the film. Yeah. So it's a tough call, And
another thing is that in the movie we don't get into the murders really at all. We're not showing any of that. It's really just this life he had with Liz Klepfer, and one of the things that Lily did for her performance was she didn't look at any of the material about the murders themselves or any photographs or anything right until the end of the movie when the turn happens and it hits, and the mask sort of completely falls away from Bundy. And you could really feel that happening in the theater during the premiere at Sundance. Because for us, we've been so immersed in the story and we know all the details about it and everything. It was easy to forget that a lot of people come into that movie not knowing so much of what happens. So getting led along like she does in the movie and then having that turn happen was, I think, really impactful.
Speaking of Sundance, I heard that everywhere, because I know you went to our lounge and did an interview and a lot of press there. But when you were going from interview to interview, was Zach really getting mobbed by fans?
Oh yeah.
What was that like for you? Were you walking together? Was it just crazy?
It's crazy. I mean, I admire the person he is having to deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
It's always like a safety consideration, especially in close quarters. So a lot of the times it was him going to the secure vehicle and some of us like sneaking out behind him while everybody followed him. But yeah, it was wild. It's definitely like being with a rock band going around him. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so in general, I just kind of wanted to ask you about what do you look for in a role? Like, what sort of interests you whenever you're obviously a great script like The Sixth Sense? Everything seems like it just sort of jumps off the page and is almost very easy for an actor to come in. What are you looking for when you read scripts these days?
I guess it's pretty simple, just something new, and the last 5 or 6 years, post college, I've been playing like some more like villains and then some jerks and some certain things that I had not had the opportunity to play before. And then once you go through a period of doing that, you start thinking like, okay, I've had like a certain look for a while. I've had a certain type of character. Like, what is the next turn? Like, what is the next phase? And I'm really excited for that now because I've been was working on like Future Man and a couple things over the past 2 years, and now it's like an opportunity to look for the next project and the next phase. Yeah.
Do you feel like now you are kind of more drawn to comedy, or does it not really matter? Do you not think
I
about
am
that?
as a fan, and a lot of it started with two things. I got to be on the Comedy Bang Bang television show for 2 seasons, and that whole world is incredible to have anything to do with. And then I did this mini series called The Spoils of Babylon with Kristen Wiig and Will Ferrell and Tobey Maguire and a huge cast. And just having that exposure to that way of working, a little bit more improv and stuff like that, it's really addictive. So I definitely gravitate towards it. But I think the main reason there's been so many comedy things in my credits recently is just it's a great time for comedy. Like there's just a lot being made.
Yeah.
All those guys on Silicon Valley have other, projects. And I think Thomas Middleditch is playing Carnegie Hall today with Ben Schwartz right now. It's
Whoa.
like that. The impact and the reach of all that world is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good for you, Thomas Middleditch. And Ben Schwartz. Just the one. Okay, so let's talk about Future Man.
Oh, yeah.
As we start to wind things down a little bit. So season 1, your character had there are all these different timelines, and you were in it a bit. What is? I know season 2 is already out, but can you maybe tease a little bit of how we can see your character in season 2?
Sure. Yeah. It's the way they had the story evolve between the seasons is just really brilliant. Like they were sort of running and gunning all through the 20th century in season 1, and so my character would sort of morph every time Josh came back to the present, and I was basically just escalating levels of psycho, up to me holding a samurai sword and driving around in a yellow Hummer. But in season 2, the theme is basically like they've sacrificed everything to save the world, and it sort of wrestles with the philosophical, like almost like Greek mythological question of like, can you really change fate? Do you just create more problems and wind up where you started by trying to alter the course of history? So we're 200 years in the future, pretty much playing it like it will be. It's an apocalyptic wasteland. The environment's been destroyed, all the animals are dead, and I am trying to offload humanity to Mars to colonize it. Because the climate on Earth can no longer support any humans. I'm also a 200-year-old holographic projection of my consciousness.
Yes.
And I have cloned a woman I fell in love with and sort of raised her as my daughter. So that's going on too. Yeah.
Normal stuff.
Just normal sci-fi stuff. You know those tropes, yeah.
If that's season 2, like what's going to happen in season 3?
I don't know,
my goodness.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the talk. It was really interesting.
Thanks.
You've had this amazing career and, longer than most people can hope for. So
I feel very lucky.
Hopefully a lot more to come.
Thank you.
Everyone check out Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile in the fall on Netflix. We don't have the date yet, but hopefully soon. And seasons 1 and 2 of Future Man are on Hulu. Thanks.
Thank you.